Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade destroys, and I mean destroys, Jason Quigley in 2. If you don't want to hear my thoughts, stay tuned to this video. The future is now. The Hibernation 5s by Kenichi Bear. Hybrid gaming and lifestyle headphones. Out of the box, you can connect to any console or PC. Bluetooth ready with a low latency USB adapter, color RGB, and extreme bass mode. The Hibernation 5s adjust to you. Whether you need a gaming, travel, gym, or lifestyle headphones, the Hibernations got you covered. The new Hibernation 5s, link in the description. Customize the way you hear the world. Welcome to the nation. Yo, what up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. You guys will see screen caps of Demetrius Andrade. He just defeated Jason Quigley. Now, for me, there weren't really any surprises. I've always thought Demetrius Andrade was a very skilled and avoided southpaw. But I want to give you guys some of my thoughts regarding the fight. Again, with the fight, there's not too much to break down. Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, he dropped him, as you guys can see. He did whatever he wanted. You know, Quigley was never really in the fight. Great feinting by Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. He controlled the tempo and he controlled the pace. One thing I will say about Demetrius Andrade is he's super awkward. Like, guys like Marcos Maidana and Pacquiao get a lot of props for being awkward. Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, on top of the fact that southpaws give a lot of people a lot of problems in general, I feel like over the years he's kind of evolved his style and he's almost integrated like this capoeira Brazilian style, real rhythmic, off rhythm, and he just switches on. He's just hard to read. So I do think Demetrius Andrade, you look at his back, he's in shape. He's definitely a tough fight for anyone in there around his division. Very skilled. Now, the only problem that I've had with Demetrius Andrade is all on the business sides. Really, Terrence Crawford and Demetrius Andrade, to me, they're very similar. Both black, both undefeated, both had an amateur pedigree, both can go southpaw. You know, one's more of a natural southpaw, and Demetrius Andrade. Quigley got blasted up. You know, Terrence Crawford, he's ambidextrous, so he'll switch on and off. And I believe that almost like when you see, it's just sad because you see a level of talent with both of these brothers, and it's just mismanaged. You know, I feel like Demetrius Andrade, definitely one of those people where his career has been mismanaged. Now, I can't say that he's completely not complicit with any of it. You know, parts of it or decisions that he made. Like he was supposed to fight, some people don't know this, Jermell Charlo, and he pulled out of the fight. You know, he wanted more money, or his dad, or, you know, I forgot exactly what they said, but he felt that it wasn't the right fight after he had signed on. And these would have given him signature opportunities. Another thing is Demetrius Andrade, and I know from an industry source for a fact, PBC was interested in signing him at one particular point, and he could have went over to PBC. Now with DAZN, you know, I try to give you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, the bad, and the ugly is Demetrius Andrade, as dope as he is and as quality as he is, and with performances like this. Now, again, Jason Quigley, this is not somebody that most expected to be able to defeat Andrade. But I was happy for Andrade because he didn't play with his food. Demetrius Andrade, he said, you know, he fought close to home. He said he was going to put on a statement, and that's exactly what he did. Jason Quigley, he's a guy with some power. He was a big Irish heart, things like that. And there were some people in the crowd rooting for him. Demetrius Andrade wasted no time. Great feinting, these looping shots, hard to read timing. He just did whatever he wanted with him. And he stopped him. He dropped him like 3-4 times and got a stoppage in the second round. So I was happy for Andre, because I think that's the type of performance that was needed to shut up the critics, because he fought Liam Williams and it was kind of the same type of fight, but Liam Williams, he just got up and kept weathering the storm and went the distance some kind of way with Demetrius Andrade. And for that, some people said like, oh, Andrade, you should have been able to get this out. So this has kind of been a stigma that people have when it comes to Demetrius Andrade. Now, it's like I'm going to start making the curious case of Demetrius Andrade videos, because I feel like he's such an anomaly in boxing. To see someone in shape, clearly got skills, has a clean cut look, likes to be a showman, has power. He just been mismanaged. There's a lot of mismanagement, and he can't seem to get a lot of the fights that would put him over. And it doesn't help that old media and guys like Canelo Alvarez, you could say whatever you want, but Canelo Alvarez was supposed to fight him at 54 or 60, and he didn't do that. And we're getting to a point where you have the Canelo fans, the Chupapi Muñeño Canelo man fans that are radical, and they say Canelo will beat everybody, yet we can't watch him beat everybody, right? It was like, oh, he'll obliterate Charlo, he'll decimate Andrade, he'll destroy and murder David Benavidez and Beterbiev, but we can't watch it. And Canelo starts playing leapfrog and going up to cruiserweight and stuff, which is a whole separate video. But with Andrade, the curious case of Demetrius Andrade, he just seems to not be able to get the type of fights. And with his age, it's really sad, because these are the politics of boxing, right? And Eddie Hearn is going to have to figure out a way. Now, Eddie Hearn post-fight, this is what I don't like, and I'm a straight shooter. DAZN puts a lot of precedence on the Charlo fight. You have a DAZN reporter, and every time he's saying it's the biggest fight in boxing, Charlo versus Andrade is bigger than AJ and Tyson Fury, undisputed. If Joshua could get his belts back from Usyk, he's saying that it's bigger than Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence. He's all about this fight, and he said this on several Demetrius Andrade telecasts and broadcasts, and it just looks a bit desperate. It looks a bit desperate, so much to the point in this fight tonight with Demetrius Andrade, he even said, make the fight happen on DAZN or make it on Showtime, just make the fight happen. And that's just weird from a business perspective, that you have a company and they're promoting a fighter who, to my knowledge, is exclusive to DAZN, and they're suggesting or advocating he possibly go to a rival network to fight. I think that's extremely weird. I never recall HBO having like HBO fighters, like let's say Canelo, and say, hey, Canelo, do whatever you can, go to Showtime and just make the Charlo fight or whatever. It just seems like backwards to me, and that's a separate issue. But Eddie Hearn, the first words out of his mouth post-fight when he jumped in the ring was about Charlo. However, he did later start talking about Charlo. These guys need to fight Demetrius Andrade, and they didn't just say Charlo. So I was happy that they didn't put all the pressure. Listen, I'm a straight shooter, steak and potatoes. The bottom line is this: DAZN has dropped the ball. Charlo versus Andrade, okay, yes, it's a great fight, but we know the inherent issues that come with trying to make this fight. That is still inexcusable that to this point, a quality operator like Demetrius Andrade, one, is not bigger, and at two, at the least, even if you can't get a Jamal Charlo yet, he hasn't got none of the fights. And the reason why I'm going to forever, be on this hill is because Eddie Hearn, when he was being boastful, when he first came to the picture with DAZN and said he was going to be the American takeover and yada, 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 he said to Jamal Charlo, hey, if you want to be an American star, you got to come to Death Row East. He said, you got to come over to DAZN, what we're doing. There ain't nothing moving at 160, 168 and nothing popping unless you come over to where we at. And this is the attitude that Eddie Hearn, capitulated. But the reality is they didn't make all these top fights from 160 to 168. That's their fault. Charlo is just one of a handful of fights that could happen, which happens to be, based on sides of the streets and politics, the hardest to make. Andrade fighting Quigleys and Lucas Keelers and, these foreign fighters that no one's really versed with, that doesn't have to happen. Guys on the network like Billy Joe Saunders, now he's retired, but they put the fight with Canelo. Andrade was supposed to fight Saunders on DAZN, and then Billy Joe Saunders pulled out or he was forced out because he failed a test. They never rescheduled the fight, even when Billy Joe Saunders signed up with Eddie Hearn and left Frank Warren. That's not Showtime and PBC's fault. That's Eddie Hearn's fault. How does Eddie Hearn work with Canelo, Triple G, Billy Joe Saunders, and Andrade, and Danny Jacobs, and none of them dudes have fought except for Canelo, a guy who already had a solid resume and didn't necessarily need the names. They got bigger fights. Everybody else but Jacobs got bigger fights, like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Why didn't Eddie Hearn put a fight together in Arizona for Andrade and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? Why did Canelo get Saunders instead of Billy Joe Saunders and Canelo, right? The only fight that might be justifiable not happening on DAZN is possibly the Danny Jacobs fight, because Andrade and Jacobs go way back and they're friends. So maybe they're not willing to fight each other. But the Caleb Smiths, the Canelos, the Triple G, Jaime Munguia, he is literally Demetrius Andrade's mandatory. So I don't want to just keep hearing about Charlo, which is one fight, when I'm naming 7 to 10 other fights with all in-house players on DAZN, and you're not making those fights. But to me, that's clout chasing, and that's a distraction. Andrade for sure needs a big name because he's not getting any younger, and he's clearly too good for these middle of the road dudes. I mean, this Quigley just fought against Shane Mosley, his son, and it was, some people had different opinions on who won. These guys aren't on Andrade's level. So I really think the pressure's on Team Andrade, Eddie Hearn, to just deliver something. Jaime Munguia, like Gabe Rosado, why did they fight each other, but Andrade can't get one of those fights? So again, Eddie Hearn, he's almost like a double agent, because he's saying, oh, somebody got to fight Andrade, but he's also making Triple G versus Murata in Japan. Why don't you make Murata versus Andrade in Japan, and then Triple G fights the winner, right? So he's saying, oh, these guys need to step up, but you also work with Canelo and allow Canelo to go on the European tour and fight the Saunders, the Caleb Smiths, and other names that helped Canelo on his way, right? Danny Jacobs, he got to fight Gabe Rosado. Jaime Munguia got to fight against Gabe Rosado. But you couldn't at least give a Gabe Rosado, someone who we know is tough and a warrior, to Andrade. But Jacobs and Munguia got him. So this is really an in-house problem. And, I don't think that Andrade wouldn't fight these people, but you got to get your business right. This is the team you signed to. Your team got to get it in. Again, as far as the fight, it's not too much for me to break down. Jason Quigley was no match. He couldn't deal with nothing Andrade was doing. Andrade still shows he's a slick southpaw, very hard to read. And he's kind of refined his schedule. You see he's in crazy shape. He's almost like a dangerous, like Emmanuel Augustus type of person now, where he's like, just the way he's moving, then he'll lunge in with shots, things that seemingly look kind of dangerous, but he's very measured in it, And I could go on and on about the curious case of Demetrius Andrade, but I don't want the video to be too long. The other thing is that hurts Andrade is, again, I feel like he's been mismanaged. The DAZN commentary, in my opinion, is horrible. Every time DAZN has him fight, it's like the commentary is horrible. They keep talking about Andrade not having power. The man has a ton of, that I could think of, first round knockdowns. He clearly has power, but they keep saying, oh, will he step on the gas? And, he doesn't have power. And it's just weird how power hungry some people are. And I just, in my opinion, I don't think Andrade, the commentary crew, gives him. They always say like, oh, why isn't he stopping him? And it's super negative. The way they come across when it comes to Andrade commentary is always negative about how he failed to impress, or does he really have power, or he won't step on the gas. And then whether people realize this or not, subconsciously, when you're being fed that, unless you're a person as like deep in this as me, who's a critical and independent thinker, some of that stuff sits with you. And then when you see Andrade not getting top fights, you know, subconsciously, this is what DAZN is telling you. Like, oh, he has to make a statement, boom, boom, boom. And like, does he have power, and will he close the show? It's always negative. Some fights you could close the show. Some guys are tough and you won't be able to get them out of there. But it's clear to me Andrade needs a top level opposition to see what he can do. And, you know, I know a lot of the Canelo fans like, oh, he's fighting Quigley. Let's keep in mind, Canelo, before he sued Golden Boy, and when he right around he was trying to get out of the contract, Canelo wanted to fight Toriano Johnson or Jason Quigley himself. But people, again, this is how the game is set up. It's set up for certain fighters to ultimately fail. People keep saying, oh, why hasn't Andrade fought anybody and he's cherry picking? I mean, it just is laughable stuff, because at the end of the day, Canelo is in a gifted position where he's the A side. He can fight anybody in boxing with the reasonable deal. Andrade clearly is not in that type of positioning where he could just point out a person to get the fight, even though, you know, in a perfect world, that would be dope. He's called out Canelo. He called Canelo out his name. He called Canelo BITCH. Truth be told, but Canelo has never, you know, chosen him for the sweepstakes. Same thing with Golovkin. Golovkin's rather fight Steve Rolls and, you know, Camille Szechuan and Murata in Japan, and you got a guy right here on DAZN, and they still ain't made the fight. So I blame Eddie Hearn and DAZN and Team Andrade just as well, just because he's too good to not be fighting. It's like Terrence Crawford 2.0, Andrade 2.0. Talented fighter, but your business and your team doesn't seem to be able to get the top fight. Like I said, there's nothing, you know, and I think the commentary also hurts Andrade, because they always have a negative. There's like Triple G, I watched him, he looked horrible to me versus Steve Rolls, he didn't look great, but Sergey Derevyanchenko, he didn't look good to me, you know? And you listen to a whole different style of commentary. When he's getting tagged by Steve Rolls, hey, no, guys, and he's getting tagged and Derevyanchenko's hurting him to the body and stuff like that, you don't hear this negativity. But when it's Andrade, it's like, oh, will he let him off the hook? And, you know, it's just bad commentary mixed with bad business and not being able to get these deals for Andrade. So, like I said, in-house, they should be able to get a solid name from him. Jaime Munguia, that's his mandatory. Don't just talk about Charlo. Charlo, that's one fight of many, which is the hardest fight to make. You know, so you could keep trying to clout chase Charlo for DAZN commentators, but y'all not even giving Andrade love on the own network with guys like Jaime Munguia. Rosado fought on DAZN. Derevyanchenko fought on DAZN. Chavez Jr. fought on DAZN. But guess what? None of them fights were against Andrade. And then you got the Caleb Smiths, the Billy Joe Saunders. Canelo was on DAZN. Triple G, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Danny Jacob. None of these fights are being made. So Eddie Hearn in front of the camera, he's like, oh, yeah, we got to do something and guys need to step up. Okay, so cancel the Japan fight for Triple G Murata and put Andrade in there with one of them. You know what I mean? Enough is enough, and it's time. If not, I don't want to hear a bunch of clout chasing and crying about one guy on PBC in Jamal Charlo. And credit to Andrade. Andrade didn't really overly talk about Charlo. It was DAZN reporters and Eddie Hearn who kept bringing up Charlo more than he said. I want to fight Triple G Murata winner. Those are both elite fights for me. Boom, boom, boom. He's been called out Canelo, so DAZN got to get it cracking. Andrade, he clearly has talent. Let me know how I did in this video, and I'm out. Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster.